My name is Alan Kapelner, and I have just been reincarnated so I can tell you my whole life story. My mother died when I was 3 years old. My father remarried in an arranged marriage to a Russian woman named Rose. I came home from school for lunch and asked Rose for an apple. She said there were no apples, but I later found out that there were bushels full of apples in the basement. Rose just found out that her husband Max had 6 children: Alan, Irving, Bernie, Nat, Abe, and Clara.
They're killing me!
My father was the youngest in his family, so he was designated to be the person who will be manufacturing the garments. My father's brothers were the executives who ran the business. My father was very benevolent to the workers, and they would bring their children to the factory with them. During lunch, they were served wine. My father joined the Garment Workers Union and was fired from his job by his brothers. He died of a heart attack, and his brothers cried at his funeral. I was a great athlete, and I was asked to play with the professional baseball team. I refused because I knew I was going to be a writer. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and was very anxious to learn about the world. I was adventurous, and I decided to stow away on a boat to Europe. So much time had gone by that I thought I was in Europe. I went to the captain, told him I was a stowaway, and I found out I was still in the USA, and he kicked me off the boat. I was very disappointed not being able to go to Europe. So I decided to hitch on a freight train and see America. They stopped the train because there was a lynching in the town, and a lot of people were there for the Saturday night entertainment. They took us out of the train and put us in jail for our safety. And I joined the CCC to learn about nature. And I got a job cutting down trees. I had a date with a hillbilly girl. When I came to pick her up, she was tied to a tree.
The 4 insurgent generals, the 4 insurgent generals, the 4 insurgent generals, mamita mia, 'tis true they betrayed you, 'tis true they betrayed you. One Christmas whole evening, one Christmas whole evening, one Christmas whole evening, mamita mia, they'll all be hanging, they'll all be hanging. Madrid, your tears of sorrow, Madrid, your tears of sorrow, Madrid, your tears of sorrow, mamita mia, we shall avenge them, we shall avenge them.
Hi, John. I'm glad you came over.
Hi, Georgia. Glad to be here.
I wanted to talk to you about the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell you about my father in the Spanish Civil War, Clarence Kalin, who was a member of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. He fought there in the most pivotal event of the 20th century because of what people fought against and won. And I know that you know a lot of people as well who were in the Spanish Civil War.
Actually, Alan Kapelner's brother, Nat Kapelner, also fought with the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. In fact, he died in Spain at the Battle of the Ebro, and he's buried in an unmarked grave there. But why did the Abraham Lincoln Brigade go to Spain?
Well, it was the most unusual time for the entire world. Hitler had been on the rise for many years, and the Czechoslovak government had been turned over to him essentially as appeasement by the Western powers. And other countries were given away to Hitler. But only one country stood back to Hitler, and that was Spain. And in fact, for them, they had been fighting for 100 years, completely futile battles to get rid of this horribly oppressive government. But in 1936, they finally got it together and they won a democratic republic. And when they did that, they did away with laws that prevented women from voting. They took land from the big landowners and gave it back to the workers who worked on it so they could actually keep their own food and eat it and not starve to death. And they helped unions get strong, and they brought everybody to school, especially women who couldn't even go to school in those days.
Well, that must have brought the wrath of the Catholic hierarchy and the corrupt military in Spain down on them, as well as the big landowners.
And the fact is that all those three groups were tremendously powerful, and they did not want to lose what they thought was their God-given right. And on the very first day of the election, Franco went to Hitler and Mussolini, and he said, "I want you to help me." And they gave him everything that modern science could give to war. They had the airplanes that no one could match. They had tanks. They had tens of thousands of army people who invaded the country.
And who was Franco?
And Franco was the general who had been part of the old regime and turned against it when people voted for democracy.
Did the United States help Spain at all at that time?
No, in fact, the United States went along with Britain and France, who did not want to help any people who were fighting for themselves for fear that they would get too much power and would really attack their profits. And profits became a very important matter in this whole war, especially in the American side and other countries too.
Well, they were so interested in their profits that they violated a boycott, an embargo on aid to the Republic by permitting Texaco to sell fuel to Hitler's Air Force, which was bombing civilian targets in Spain.
That's right. It was really an act of sabotage, and they were really traitors. And because of what they did, the tremendous fight back around the world was stalled, and there never had been such a fight back. I didn't mention this, but 40,000 people from around the world, including doctors and nurses, and people who were poets and auto workers, went to Spain to help the government, the people of Spain, and they became part of the Spanish army. And they were known for their heroism and their total dedication. And the Spanish people themselves had the most amazing ability to fight back, even though they started with nothing. And with all of that, you know what happened.
Yes, and there were many people in the United States who supported the government of Spain, the Republican government of Spain. In fact, Alan Kapelner's future wife, Edith, was part of a large group of people who gathered in Madison Square Garden, and they were shouting, "Down with the embargo on loyalist Spain." But it didn't come down, and the Republic was defeated brutally,
And the amazing thing is really that despite that horrible loss, which turned the whole world back for, we lost 50 or 60,000 million lives in World War II. After time has gone on, the people of Spain have really begun to wake up to what was going on, and they are now fighting to restore the fight back and to reclaim what they lost in that war.
And we have to live with the fact that if the democracies had supported the elected government of Spain, that we could have stopped Hitler, stopped World War II, and stopped the Holocaust.
That's exactly true.
Como ser humano, el hombro que quieres es su pan. Las abradurías le bastan ya, porque estas nada le dan. Pues 1, 2, 3, pues 1, 2, 3, compañero en tu lugar, porque eres del pueblo, afíliate ya en el frente popular.
I was working in Washington, D.C., where Edith visited me, and we decided to take a couple of my jazz friends to dinner. The restaurant would not serve them because they were black, and we had to get sandwiches from the back of the restaurant. I wrote a play called This Land of Mine. Being 23, I was the youngest playwright to have a play on Broadway. One of the final rehearsals, the sponsor came to see. He said, "I can't be giving my money to a play that destroys my beliefs." The play was never put on. I was married to Edith Steffen on August 22nd, 1942.
The wedding was held in my sister Janet's home. Only the immediate family was invited. We visited our friend Balcom Green's home in Montauk. Balcom Green was Andy Warhol's teacher in Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. In the past, artists bought property in the Hamptons with very little money, and now no artist could afford to live in the Hamptons today. The wealthy people always follow the artists. This is an example that the rich people came after the artists were there, and they already bought their property. Now, the Hamptons is a really wealthy place to live. Alan was walking his dog in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden, the dog froze and wouldn't move. When Alan looked up, he saw what might be a flying saucer. It whizzed away like a rocket. The next morning, the lighthouse and all of the newspapers were all asking questions and were interviewing Alan about what he saw. When I was young, and then it was only radio, we would have people interviewed who had just come back from a trip that they were abducted by the people who represented the flying saucers. Many times they said they came back with a potato, and we thought it was all a big joke, because they played it out as if it was a joke. And many have gone by since then. Edith bought Alan an electric typewriter, and Alan would not use any typewriter except the manual one. because he loved to hear the noise of the keys and jazz music while he was working. He went on to write and publish Lonely Boy Blues, which was published by Scribners and was edited by Maxwell Perkins. Alan was the last person that Maxwell Perkins discovered after Ernest Hemingway and William Faulkner. Alan's second novel was called All the Naked Heroes and was published by Eric Braziller. The publisher Braziller is now at this writing 100 years old and still editing in his publishing house called Braziller. Braziller invited Alan and I to dinner at his home. When I walked in with Alan, Braziller remarked that I looked like a Toulouse-Lautrec painting. Anthony Quinn commissioned Lonely Boy Blues twice to make a movie of the book. The movie was never made because the actress Katharine Hepburn wanted too much money for a low-cost film. Alan was very disappointed because he had hoped to work with Anthony Quinn on the film while it was being made. Alan met Anthony Quinn and they were going to take a walk together. Anthony Quinn put on a lot of disguises, like dark glasses and a big hat, hoping that nobody will recognize him. When nobody recognized him, he was very disappointed. Alan won the D.H. Lawrence Award. It meant he could spend the whole summer living and working in D.H. Lawrence's ranch in Taos, New Mexico. Mabel Dodge, who was a heiress, moved to Taos in 1917 and fell in love with Lujan, the Indian chief of the nearby Pueblo, and married him. She invited many cultural luminaries to explore the Indian culture that she felt held the cure for the disassociated modern humanity. D.H. Lawrence arrived in 1922 with his wife Frida and Dorothy Brett, an English aristocrat and painter who doggedly followed Lawrence around the world. D.H. Lawrence said that it's the ghosts that one misses mostly. I know them, they know me. We go together. This place heaves with ghosts. When I was visiting Alan in Taos, New Mexico, he said, I would not sleep in the bed of D.H. Lawrence. Oh, I thought that was ridiculous and told him that I was going to sleep in the bed just to show you. I slept in the bed and cried all night. Lawrence died in 1930, and Frida, his wife, arranged for a mausoleum to honor D.H. Lawrence. It was near the ranch. People came from all over the world to honor him. Frida Lawrence declared about Lady Brett and Mabel Dodge Lujan, now let's see them steal him. D.H. Lawrence's wife, Frida Lawrence, felt she had won over the two women in D.H. Lawrence's life. With Lujan's generosity, she gave the ranch to D.H. Lawrence. It was worth $1,000. He gave Lujan his manuscript, Sons and Lovers. It was worth $50,000. Alan's published work was Lonely Boy Blues, a novel. It was published by Scribners, and the editor was Maxwell Perkins. It became a paperback, and it was done by Line Books, Belmont Books, and Mayflower Dell in England, Reuter and Lunig in Germany. A second novel was All the Naked Heroes, which was published by Braziller. The editor was Edwin Seaver, and it was a Book Find Club selection, a Popular Library selection, Mayflower Dell paperback in England. It was also optioned for a film by Robert Eston. Brilliant!
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Alan was pretty much a loner, but he had a few very good friends. Harry Jackson left his mother's restaurant to become a cowboy at 16. He joined a ranch in Cody, Wyoming, and started to do Indian and cowboy sculptures. All of Alan's friends had dualities, and his duality was singing folk songs.
Well, I'm standing around town, I'm a-wasting my time. I'm out of a job and I ain't got a dime. When this old boy steps up and he says, I suppose that you're a bronc twister by the rig of your clothes.
And doing sculptures of cowboys and Indians. Another friend of his with a duality is Emmanuel Gant, who is a psychiatrist and a composer. He was a pioneer in electronic music. I will be showing a piece of his music, Bob Bob, with Ken Knowlton's multimedia design.
Oh, hello, Alan. I've been wanting to talk to you. I'm writing an article about you in my new book. Shake it for the world, smartass. And I'm interested in the ideas you have about writing. You know, I want to get to what you mean when you say you want your literary men to make statements.
Statements in terms of one's time. Say something about the world we live in terms of love and hate.
And what did you mean by the statements you made in Lonely Boy Blues?
It's about failed men and women greedy to resurrect themselves and their children.
Huh. And what's the statement you made in All the Naked Heroes?
One brother with a total inability to check a crisis, and another was able to go beyond the crisis.
Now I'm getting to the problem I want to pursue.
It's about freedom in the terms of one's philosophy, his own feeling, his own song.
Alan was a writer, first and always. He also wrote poetry and did lots of drawings. After Alan was no longer in this world, Robert Nedelkoff wrote an article about Alan in the BAFFLER.
Before speaking of the forgotten or neglected or obscure writer, it may be worthwhile to ask, should a writer be forgotten? The joy of getting something truly expressed in a new or meaningful way is part of the writer's task, and he wanted to express himself in a way that would reach other people. His very individual style made him stand out from the other writers of the time. That style added ideas of prose rhythm and cadence that came from his appreciation of blues and jazz. He had jazz and boogie-woogie records playing nonstop when he wrote it. When Lonely Boy Blues reached Max Perkins, he had found among the piles of manuscripts that reached his desk the first novels of F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, and Thomas Wolfe, and so he certainly could recognize genuine potential from the first page. Max Perkins picked up this manuscript, and on the first page read this: "The flesh spins to the skull, and discharging in the skull lives the brain, jackpot brain, passport to a future, Mardi Gras destiny, drowning in confetti and wine. The future belongs to you, you are the future. Very elementary, my dear brain. Paste yourself to the bandwagon. Be the spoke in the wheel, you bitter American dream brain, most likely not to succeed as a spoke. Brain not knowing where it's going, but it's going." And at once Max Perkins knew he had not only a real writer, but a writer of distinction on his hands. So Alan took up work on his book again and completely rewrote it, this time giving it the title All the Naked Heroes. The editor, Edwin Seaver, accepted it on behalf of the publisher, George Braziller, and the novel appeared in 1960. The book failed to make its way into the hands of many readers, but it did reach the personal library of at least one universally known figure, Marilyn Monroe, someone who bought it when it was auctioned in 1999 at Christie's. The words that follow are spoken by a character in Alan's second book, but he later used them as a description of his own goals. "What a rough, tough, lonely job serious writers have, to make points, to make ideas stick in hope of rerouting minds. It seems to me too many writers write as if they're committing acts of espionage. When reading their work, it always seems they've spied on and stolen someone's state secrets. The writer should steal no man's state secrets. I think a writer should be enslaved to no dead or living God. He should create strictly from his own personality. His signature should be so deeply his own." And because Alan's signature is so deeply his own, he should not be a forgotten writer, but should be remembered.
The insane, at the world's edge, powdered their hellish bodies and spoke of polka-dotted flesh and the rising price of straitjackets and canned elephants. While in the violated earth below, long-haired boys with hands full of hand grenades blasted naked girls in Buddhist temples, Europe's ex-kings sat on thrones in memory-gutted cemeteries and exiled their perfumed queens to East African whorehouses. Starved great cats in holy scarlet sacramental robes lured pregnant gypsies to the slaughter yards of Spain, and Asiatic men escaped flesh-hot cages of women and swam the Australian crawl in coffins of chilled arsenic. In its final issue on a Black Rainbow Day, the New York Times reported that the male population of North America met the male population of South America and pledged suicide in Central America.
The night wind will come through the mountains. The leaves will dance and the birds will sleep. The moon will paint its yellow image in an inky lake. Find that lake. Look for me. I'll be there.